So we're on the bottom here of Tzadi Beis Amid Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom. Amalei Rish Lakish. So Rish Lakish is now addressing Rabbi Yochanan, and he's going to try to reject Rabbi Yochanan. He loved the Kalsach Gavar Rabba. In other words, it was Rabbi Yanai that is a Gavar Rabba, he's an Adam Gadol, and he accepted your interpretation of the Mishnah. If not for that, I'm afraid of Rabbi Yanai. But Hava Minolech, I know I would have said, Masnisim, and we're talking about where the Kedushin at Toltzim Yevamot Shuk is Rabbi Akiva. And we prove from the Mishnah that Ein Kedushin Toltzim Yevamot Shuk, and that was the support for the sheet of Rav, who derived from the pasuk Havaya that Ein Kedushin Toltzim B'chai Ve'lam, because Lo Sia Ish Sames, Lo Sia is Miloshen Havaya. And Rabbi Yanai said that the Mishnah indicates that Ein Kedushin Toltzim B'Yevamot. We can try to review that quickly. This is a Mishnah Kedushin. And Omer Liisha Areat Mekudeshes Li Liachar Shes Gayer, and on that list is Liachar Sheyachlotz Loch Yevameh, which meant that he's creating a Kedushin which could only be Chal later on, because now it's impossible to be Chal. He hasn't yet converted, so he's not a ger, he's not yet a ger, and so on and so on. And it's before Chalitza. So he's a man min hashuk who's marrying a Yevamah lashuk, and he's saying that this Kiddush should be Chal after you receive Chalitza. And the Mishnah Kiddushin says, Eina Mekudeshes. Why? Because at that moment in time, before she got the Chalitza, it would be impossible for him to be Mekadesh, to create Kiddushin that are valid. And that was the support for Rav. So Rish Lakish says, no, that Mishnah is Aliba de Rabbi Akiva, reflects the Shita that Ein Kedushin Tosim B'chai Ve'lam. We don't accept Rabbi Akiva, and therefore Kedushin would be Tosim in Yevamot L'Shuk. Yevamot L'Shuk is only Lo Sia Eish Sames Hachutz L'Ishar, it's only a law. And no one argues, whether it's Shmuel or Rav, that according to Rabbi Akiva, Ein Kedushin Tosim B'Yevamot L'Shuk. The entire machlok between Rav and Shmuel about Tfisas Kedushin B'Yevamot L'Shuk is according to the Chachamim of Rabbi Akiva. But that Mishnah in Kedushin, says Rish Lakish, reflects the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara now rejects Rish Lakish. For Ika Rabbi Akiva, is it really feasible to say that that Mishnah in Kedushin reflects the Shita of Rabbi Akiva? Because if so, Ki Omar Le La, right? When he says to this Yevamah Lashuk, Yevamah, Shomeres Yovah, he says to us, Kachi Li, Liachar Sheyachlotz Leich Yevameh, is Litfasei Ba Kiddushin. What was the issue here about Liachar Shetichlotz? Hareyat Mekudesh Liachar Shetichlotz. But we could have said that it's similar to the other cases of Liachar Shetisgairi, etc., and it comes under what's called Dover Shelo Boliol, that right now it doesn't exist. So can I sell you fruits on the tree that haven't yet grown? And we say, Ein Adam Makne Dover Shelo Boliol. But that's not the universally, unanimously accepted opinion. There are others who say that you can sell a Dover Shelo Boliol. What's it called in modern language? Futures? Yeah, I can sell you futures, according to one Mandion. In the case of a Yevamah, and she hasn't yet received Chalitza, that's called a Dover Shelo Boliol. Right now, she's not in the parsha. Or we can go a step further. Even if I were to say, just 1 second, if we said that maybe the Mishnah is going to Rabbi Akiva and Ein Kiddushin Toast, they laugh. Now the Gemara wants to say no. The Mishnah could not be reflecting the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. Why not? So we're going to try to prove now that Rabbi Akiva is the one who says he can sell futures that haven't yet come into the world. And therefore, in the case of Arayat Mekudeshes li Achar Chalitza, that would certainly be a valid Kedusha. But 1 second, he cannot be Mekadisha right now because Ein Kedushin Tosa Yevamot L'Shuk, according to Rabbi Akiva. But he can be Mekadisha for the future. And the Kedusha will be valid, according to Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva holds other Maknit of Shlomo Aliola. So I'm trying to figure this out. According to Rabbi Akiva, if a man says to a woman, would Rabbi Akiva validate that Kedushin because other Makna Dov Shalom Oliolam? Or is the Gemara only saying that in the case of Yevama, there Rabbi Akiva would say the Kedushin are valid because other Makna Dov Shalom Oliolam? I'm trying to see if anybody on the bottom here might address this question. There's a chaf here, but I don't know where is this chaf coming from. Kaddish Isha באופן שבש"ס הקדושין אין הקדושים יכולים לחול ומקדשה על מנס שיחולו לאחר הזמן. אז כיוון שבש"ס שקידש לא היו הקדושים ראויים לחול, But right now, I don't see an alternative interpretation of the Mishnah Kedusha. I'm not so comfortable about this. It's all a matter of Davar Shalom Bali Olam. The Machni Davar Shalom Bali Olam. The Machni Davar Shalom Bali Olam. You see, the Machni Davar Shalom Bali Olam means that the hefzer that you're selling, you're transferring ownership on, is not in the world. How can you transfer ownership on something that's not in the world? It doesn't exist. You need a kinyan. But here, there's a man and there's a woman. Why is that? Dover Shalom Baliolam. Apparently, Dover Shalom Baliolam means something totally different. It's not the way I understood it, that it's impossible to sell a hefzer that doesn't exist. But rather, Dover Shalom Baliolam means the kinyan doesn't exist. The possibility of effectuating the kinyan doesn't exist. Because it's before Gerus or before Shichur. And Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that even if the kinyan now is impossible, halachically, you can still effectuate the kinyan. It sounds like Rabbi Akiva is looking now at the future, as if the future exists now. So I do a Masechet Kinyan, and the Masechet Kinyan is a feasible, viable Masechet Kinyan for a month from now. And it's if now, when I did the Masechet Kinyan, as if it's a month from now. We can take the future and bring it backwards into the present. And that's called Other Makri Dover Shalom Bolio. So if the Yavam will be Cholitz in a week from now, then the Shuk fellow who's Makadisha now, that Kiddushin is valid according to Rabbi Akiva because we're taking what's going to be in a month from now and we're bringing it back to now, as if now there's already a Chalitza. And that affects you, it validates the Maisa Kiddushin of now, so that he'll be Misgayer in a month from now. The Maisa Kiddushin, as he is today as a guy, will anticipate what's going to be later in time, meaning at time T2, when he actually goes into the mikvah and he's Megayer himself. So let's understand the Havamina and the Maskana. The Havamina was that this Mishnah reflects the Shita that you cannot effectuate a kinyan now, which would not be chal now. Hence, we prove that Ein Kiddushin Tosim Yevamot Shuk. Now we're saying that Kiddushin Tosim Yevamot Shuk. And we're going according to Shmuel against Rav. And Kiddushin Tosim Yevamot Shuk. So why do we invalidate this Kiddushin? So now we have to introduce another element into the equation. Another reason to disqualify a kinyan under Davar Shalom Aliyom. But it's not really a Davar Shalom. A real Davar Shalom means that I could not possibly effectuate the kinyan now. I have to anticipate something that's going to happen later. That's your definition, classic Davar Shalom. Now we're expanding Davar Shalom. And Davar Shalom Aliyom includes even a case where I could have effectuated the kinyan now, but I can't effectuate the kinyan now. Just 1 second. I could effectuate the kinyan now, But it's a davar shelo bo li'olam from the focal point of his tanakh, because he wants the kedusha to be chal after chalitza. He could be mekadosh on now because we're going like Shmuel that kedushin tosim b'chayvei lav. The reason why the kedushin is invalid is because of an expanded definition of davar shelo bo li'olam. The limited definition of davar shelo means that I cannot effectuate a kinyan now based on what's going to happen later on, because now I could not effectuate the kinyan. So it's called a davar shelo bo li'olam. Now we have an expanded definition of davar shelo, which includes even a case that I could effectuate the kinyan now, but where I set up the kinyan in such a way that it's out of my jurisdiction. And that's called the davar shelo bo li'olam. It's almost like the second category is a borrowed term. We're calling it a davar shelo bo li'olam, but it's not really a davar shelo bo li'olam. So, Rabbi Kiva, the Achar Sheyachot Zechivameh is Litfus Eva Kiddushin. According to Rabbi Akiva, even though now I could not possibly effectuate the kinyan with this Yivamah L'Shuk, nevertheless, the Kiddushin will be chal, and they're valid. Why? Later Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo li'olam. And now we're going to prove on the top of Tzadik Gimel that Rabbi Akiva holds that Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo li'olam. And I can effectuate a kinyan now, even though right now the kinyan could not possibly be chal, but a future event will activate the kinyan of now. So can I do such a thing? The Rabbanan say no, and Rabbi Akiva says yes. I can create a valid kedushin, even though that kedushin is sort of suspended in midair, and it cannot be tofes until such and such a thing happens. And Rabbi Akiva will say that that's kosher. That's a valid kedushin. And I'm tempted to think, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, that Rabbi Akiva would argue against all the cases in the Mishnah Kedushin. They all fit one bill. I cannot effectuate the Kedushin now until an event takes place later on, like the case of the Chalitza, because Rabbi Akiva holds in Kedushin Tovsin, be a Vamal Ashur. So we need the Maisa Chalitza to take place. And Rabbi Akiva says that even though the Kedushin cannot be chal until after that Maisa, the Kedushin are valid, because Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo li'olam. And Rabbi Akiva is going to apply the same logic to the case of Liachashes Gairi, where the Kedushin could only be valid after Geiris, the Maisa that's going to happen later on, and yet the Kedushin is valid. And I'm tempted to think, and this is more philosophy than halacha, that Rabbi Akiva's shita is based on a different understanding of time. I don't know, the person I would ask about this is Rabbi Meir Chwersky. Are you familiar with Rabbi Meir Chwersky? He is Rav Soloveitchik's grandson, and he's a Rebbe in YU. He wrote an extensive piece of work on the halachic philosophy of time. I never read it. It's probably based on physics or something, so I don't know if I'll understand. But it could be that Rabbi Akiva has a different perception of how time operates. And I can create a kinyan, even though that kinyan right now is impossible, but an event in the future is going to activate that kedushin and validate it. Because Adam Makne Davar Shelo bo li'olam. I don't know, unless I'm making a mistake, it seems to me that Rabbi Akiva would be machshir the kedushin in all the cases of the Mishnah. So to defend Shmuel by saying, "Oh no, don't draw any conclusions and proofs for Rav based on that Mishnah, because that Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva," you cannot do so. You don't have the luxury of attributing that Mishnah to Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva rejects that entire Mishnah, and he would validate the kedushin in all the cases of the Mishnah. Because other makna davar shelo b'aliolam. Konam shani ose leficha. I guess leficha means that she's talking to him in the masculine, so it's his pair. So konam shani ose leficha. Leficha means achila. So what exactly is she saying? Let's say she cooks dinner for her husband, and her husband is about to eat the dinner. And then she says, Konam shani osa leficha. For your pair, there's a konam on that, that schnitzel that I fried for you. I mean, in such a case, I think that's valid grounds for divorce. Okay, no, I'm just joking, but is ein tzarich lahafer? Which means that the neder is not worth a dime. You'd ask me, I would say this has nothing to do with davar shelo b'aliolam, because her neder is on his pair, that his pair should be enjoined from having any benefit from her cooking and so forth and so on. But the issue here, I guess, is a different issue. Does she have rights within marriage to create such a koma? And the answer is no. Ein habal tzarich lahafer. Oh, he gives an explanation. Kevan cha'isha mitzubedes lebaila lasos bitzemer u'maisi yodeh shalohu ein hi yachol lesar satzemer al baila below zubilvat shemaisi yodeh shalohi el afilu dochka atzmo. The osasa yoser mishir techivu chachamim lasos lebaila. I don't know what that means. She made 2 schnitzels instead of 1. I don't know exactly what happened here. Is masha osasa biyadeh eina shalom ela shal bailahu v'eini yachol lesar olam. So all the products of Hamaisi Yadayim belong to him. She cannot create a konam or neder on Hamaisi Yadayim, even if she makes more than the shir of the chacham. I don't know what that means. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer. Rabbi Akiva validates the neder. Why? Because Shema Tadif Olav. Oh, here's the case where she made 2 schnitzels instead of 1. The af al pi, or Yosef in a roy, shehi b'chuyevas lasas lo al pi hakitzva shekavu chachamim, batzemer ha'odef shenasa mitoch shedchuka shedochka atzmo l'melacha shalahi. So I'm not exactly sure what Rabbi Akiva is saying. This reminds me of what's called an Isur Kolel. Are you familiar with that? Like, let's say something is awesome, but I add another Isur to it. So you don't say Ein Isur Chal Isur. So here she's adding a konam for the adif, for the, what's it called? The ta'adif. And this neder, because it's meaningful for the odef, which is shalah, which she can create a neder, and then the neder is chal even on the first shnitzel. So the Gemara says that neder is a davar shalah bali olam. She hasn't yet made any schnitzel. So how could she ask the schnitzel that she'll make in the future? It must be that Adam Makne Davar Shelo Bali Olam. And that's Rabbi Akiva here says, Yafer, the neder is valid until he does Hafara. And even though Maisi Adeh Shalabalhu, and Edo the most of Davar Sheni Shalom, but here, Shema Tadif Olav, she makes more than she's obligated to make in the framework of marriage. Is Yechol Lesser al Bailo, Nimsa Afsha Rebach Maisi Yodeh Eno Kayom, the Ein Biyoda Lasos Lifnei Sheteyosem. Nevertheless, Yechol Leisha Lo Osra al Bailo, Mishum Shalo Osid Lovo, it will come into existence. Buchach So Rabbi Akiva Adam Makne Davar Shelo Bali Olam. So the word makna is very interesting because I don't think it should be interpreted literally. We're not talking about aknas, we're talking about the validity of the neder. And I suspect that this is a reflection of Rabbi Akiva's shita about zman, that anything that could happen and will happen in the future is as if it happened now. So you can take a neder on something that doesn't exist but will come into existence. She'll be the balabas on that odef. And therefore the neder is chal konam shani osa b'fich. And now if we swing around to our sugya, in the case of Kedushin, whether it's l'shes gayer, l'shes gairi, l'shes tachri, or after chalitza, in all those cases, Rabbi Akiva will validate the Kedushin because it's as if the Zman of tomorrow is now. So what we have here in front of us is a sugya about Rabbi Akiva regarding the Davar Shelo Bali Olam. What does Rabbi Akiva do? Does he validate a kinyan of Davar Shelo Bali Olam? Does he not? It would seem from the Mishnah in Nedarim that Rabbi Akiva, as the dissenting view, is actually maintaining Adam Makne Davar Shelo Bali Olam. Where is this Mishnah? In the Mesoras Hashas, he writes Ksubas, Nedarim, and Kedushin. So I don't know exactly where this Mishnah is. The Gemara says, and with this we'll wrap it up, Itmar Allah, Omar Avhuna Beredi Rabbi Yeshua, Be'omeres, Ikachu Yadai Lo Sehem. Yadayim Isnu Bi'alma. So it's not a Davar Shelo Bali Olam because the neder is not chal on the future schnitzel that she's going to bake or the future beggar that she's going to weave, but rather on her yadayim. E osru yadai alach alech. Interesting. Losehem. You see that word losehem. Losehem means lemisha asa'am shu hakadosh baruch hu shekona b'loshen zu. Kona b'loshen zu eino nechshav she'asra davar shelo bali olam. Why? Because yodayim kayomim ba'olam b'shash asrasam b'konom l'bayim. Akonim chalalim. Shabal osuli henos behen means from the Yadayim. Ubele nesar b'chol masha osa b'yodea, and that's ka'oser dekel sheperosav asurim gamkin. Okay, then, so let's make a note of where we got to here on Daf Tzadi Gimel Amid Aleph. We're up to Pliga de Rav Nachman, which is approximately 5 lines down from the top. Correct? Right, so thank you and have a Shabbat Shalom.